Good Friday afternoon to you. Welcome to the John Sanchez Show on News Talk 780 KOH. It's a pleasure to be with you this Friday. TGIF. Challenging week, but we made it through. We're all standing still. What a great day we had today, though. And unfortunately, still let us finish the week a little bit in negative territory. Nothing major by any means, but yeah, nice rally today. Going to tell you all about it, what happened today, why it happened. And then we're going to move into a fun Friday topic. I'm going to lay off the financial side just a little bit for you. And I've titled today's show, Same Marriage, Different Retirement. Are you and your spouse on the same page? Folks, I can't tell you how many times when I sit down to help people plan their retirement, and the husband wants, or let me rephrase it, the husband has one idea of what he wants for his retirement. The wife has another idea of what she wants for her retirement. And somehow we've got to come together and meet it in the middle. So they're both happy and they both can live the financial life in retirement that they want. But there's much more than the financial side. I've shared the story a million times. I'm going to do it a million one. I remember when I was a brand new broker, my dad retired, and my mom, who was always a stay-at-home mom, I said, "Mom, how do you like Dad's, he was like 2 weeks into retirement." I said, "How do you like that?" She goes, "I hate it." I said, "Whoa, what do you mean you hate it?" She goes, "He's completely screwed up my routine." Because this woman, same time every day, she put the laundry in, she'd empty the dishwasher. She had a set routine. And my dad disrupted it, right? So that was my introduction into, you can have common financial goals, but do you have different lifestyle goals when it comes to retirement? So I thought it'd be a fun topic. Again, nothing too heavy for a Friday. We're all tired. It's been a long, hot week. And let's go with something again, kind of on the fun side. So let me get the stock market side going for you, and then we'll move over into that topic. So we didn't have any economic reports on the calendar today. What we wanted to see, as I mentioned yesterday, was a follow through, right? We had obviously a very, very significant sell off in the market yesterday when the Dow lost over 700 points, 704 to be exact. The Nasdaq yesterday was down 264. S&P lost 67. The culprit yesterday: rising oil prices, rising bond yields. Again, Treasury Secretary Bessent came out yesterday for the second time and said, "Hey, we're going to accelerate this. We can make it bigger, I should say, not accelerate, but make it bigger." This bond buying program he announced the day before of, going in and buying basically 20 and 30-year bonds, some of the 10s a little bit. And then I told you, both days, yesterday and the day before, the street didn't like it, and they still don't like it. So today was a real test to see how much they didn't like it. And I'll say we didn't pass the test because bond yields went up again. What was different this time around? The stock market didn't go the opposite direction. And, frankly, we had a lot of reasons to. Luckily, oil, which was up earlier in the day, finished down with about $1.08 loss. But, if you look at the bond yield side of things, like I said, if that's the number one concern of institutional investors, they brushed it aside today because bond yields did move up right across all the maturities, but the stock market also went up. So nice little fail of that test there. I like failing those kind of tests. All right. So let me tell you how we finished, and then I'll build up to what the heck actually happened. So we finished with a gain of 518 on the Dow, 0.98% to a close of 53,277. The Nasdaq rose 114 points, 0.44% to close at 26,180. And the S&P rose 33 points, or 0.43%, to finish the day at 7,674. And I'm going to throw the Russell 2000 in. It had a nice gain for the small caps, up 0.85%, or 25 points, to a close there of 3,000. So, again, overall, a pretty strong day. Obviously, we didn't make back what we lost in the Dow yesterday. Still missed that by a couple hundred points, but definitely a step in the right direction. So the financial sector day offered a nice boost. Crypto-related stocks did very well as the White House yesterday, was really pushing for basically institutions to be more welcoming to cryptocurrency. So we saw, we've seen this week a big run up in crypto prices. We saw the likes today of companies that deal with those a lot, like Robinhood today jumped 14%, Coinbase up about 8%, so on and so forth. So, so we had some pretty decent pockets of strength. But, when it was all said and done, of course, we have to look and see how we really finished as far as the tone of the market. So there's a lot of jitteriness out there. I can use that slang word there. A lot of jitteriness. People are very concerned. They don't know what's going on. Institutions, like I said, I've never seen this. I made this point yesterday. I want to make it again today. I have never seen in my career Wall Street firms coming out, and especially with Trump, and basically completely disagreeing with him. And he's blaming, the street's blaming him because, of course, Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, works for the president, quote, quote. So the street's not happy with it. There's been, like I said, a tremendous amount of criticism ever since that news was announced on Wednesday of the accelerated bond buy program. Because again, once again, Bessent, yeah, he's not a quote politician, but he's a politician. He's gonna say what he thinks the street's gonna, wants to hear, and the street's too smart for that, right? The street's like, because they really pitched this to the U.S. public. I'll back up for those not sure really kind of what happened. They kind of pitched this whole accelerated bond buying program as a great way to bring down interest rates without the Federal Reserve having to bring down interest rates, which we know they're not in any big hurry to do that. But they also pitched it as a way to decrease the government's debt, the country's debt, which we know is now 40 trillion basically. Well, the street's like, no, that's not what you're doing whatsoever. All you're really doing is a bond's maturing, you're turning around and buying another one. That's all you're doing. And, instead of doing the normal, you're doing, again, $2 to $4 billion. So the street came out and, like I said, really said, look, don't try to pull the wool over our eyes. We're not that stupid. And we don't like this. So that's why you had yields moving up today, because the street is still, very, very unconvinced that this is going to be the right move. Many are saying essentially what you've done now, Mr. Bessent, is you are now pitching the Treasury against the Federal Reserve. You're supposed to work together, but that's not the case in the street's eyes. And so no one, like I said, I've yet to see one comment from any major Wall Street firm or strategist saying, hey, this was a great move by the government this week. But you saw the result yesterday. The street, if it does not like something, it will find any reason and every reason in the world to begin, selling things off. As one strategist, chief strategist at KBRA said, the background here is very unforgiving at the moment. There's this cocktail of a concern that has risen up regarding the credit and the bond, or KBRA, by the way, is a credit and bond rating agency, but regarding this topic. So, like I said, I could spend the numerous hours going through all the details, but you get my point that it was not very well received by the street. All right, so now let's go to today. What happened today? One nice thing, because I know many of you own gold, it was a nice surge in gold prices today. $110.50 rise, closed at $4,680.10. So we saw our local Newmont mining doing very well today, up 3.09%, $3.94 gain to 131.58. Freeport McMoran up $5.45, 7.65% rise to 76.65. By the way, I should mention this, that just in the month of August, we've seen, nearly $600 increase in gold prices per ounce. Pretty substantial. Silver added about 2.1% today to 69.56 an ounce. Now, let's go to another big story of the week, which was the announcement a couple days ago with Moderna, indicating that, they, along with Merck, have really made some excellent cancer vaccine strides with a new drug that they are working on. They haven't filed for FDA yet. Stock had a huge, remember, it had a 171% gain on Wednesday. Gave a little bit back yesterday. Today, Moderna moved back up $11.81, 8.86% to a price of $145.13. Let's see. Oh, I want to mention Tesla, because this is kind of a local story in a sense. It's a state of Nevada. This Tesla moved up today. Let's see. Final move was $17.73 gain, up 5.14% to $362.86, because down south in Vegas, Nevada has approved robotaxi services in Clark County. So that was a major one for that. Ross Stores, big earnings number on the upside this morning. They were a nice move, $10.05 gain, 4.39% to $239.04. Google, pretty quiet over in the tech space, $3.55 gain. Meta was up $4.07. NVIDIA lost a little bit today, down $2.09, 0.96% loss to $214.76. All right, now that we got another week under our belt, where do we sit on a year-to-date basis? Here's where your major averages are. For the year, the Dow's up 10 points. NASDAQ is higher by 12.6. The S&P is up 12.1. And the Russell 2000 performing so much better. It was not nearly as volatile as the major averages. Russell 2000 year to date, up 21.6%. So world still loves small caps, even in a rising interest rate environment, which normally they don't, right? Young companies have to borrow a lot of money to grow. And normally you see small caps begin to sell off in a fear of a rising interest rate environment. Well, we don't have just a fear, as I'll tell you when we come back, it is happening. But small caps being very, very resilient. Welcome back to the John Sanchez Show on Newstalk 780 KOH. Happy Friday to all of you. Here is how we finished up when the dust finally settled at 1 o'clock. As I said, a 518 gain on the Dow. The NASDAQ rose 113 and the S&P up 33. All right, let's go to the commodities. Also, as I'd mentioned, $1.08 decline in oil today. Thank goodness, 87.07 a barrel. Gold rose 110.50 an ounce, 4,680.10. And the ever so important 10-year Treasury, again, edged up as I've been hinting. We had a 4 basis point increase on the 10-year to a close of 4.74%. Ouch. And on the weekly basis, kind of again got lucky on this side of it. On the weekly basis, we're up 4 basis points on the 10-year. Do want to mention though some of the other maturities. The 2-year up 6 basis points for the week. Same with the 3 and the 5, and then the 30-year ended up only being up 1 basis point for the week. But today it closed at a yield of 5.28%. Market started having problems earlier in the week when we hit around 5.29, 5.3, right around there. So that's kind of our line in the sand that we have to see how the market's going to react if we hold there. All right, you're up to date on the market. Let's get down to our fun Friday real estate topic. But before I do, I want to give you a little reminder. Next Wednesday, every other Wednesday, we do this, and next Wednesday it is coming up. I want you to join me for my next educational webinar for the estate planning business, specialized trust and estate plans. We're titling it The Estate Planning Checkup. It's going to be at 6 p.m. next Wednesday, August the 26th. You know, you wouldn't go 10 years, let's say, without seeing a doctor. You wouldn't go 10 years without seeing your dentist. So why do so many people go that long, if not longer, without looking at their estate plan? You see, your plan isn't something that you set up once and you forget it. Over the years, your family changes, your assets change, the laws change right along with them. A plan that fit your lifestyle perfectly, say 5 or 10 years ago when you had the trust originally created, can quietly drift out of step. And you usually don't want to find out until it's too late to fix. Well, usually you're not going to find out. Your family's going to find out. So in this webinar, we're going to give your estate plan a checkup. We're going to walk through the pieces that matter the most: your trust, your beneficiary designations, your powers of attorney, and how your assets are owned, and show you how to tell whether they still work together the way you intended or maybe not. I want you to kind of think of this as a physical for your estate plan. A little attention now can absolutely save your family a great deal of frustration later. So again, 6 p.m. next Wednesday, just go to my website, specializedtrust.com, and you'll see the sign up banner right at the top of the website. All right, let's get down to today's topic. Once again, it's going to be a fun one. Same marriage, different retirement. Those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, well, you're in for a treat, because this is real life stuff I'm bringing you. You know, you spent decades saving for retirement with your spouse, but have you ever asked your spouse what they actually want retirement to look like? What if you want to travel, but they want to stay home? You want to move, and they refuse to leave. Well, today I'm going to be talking about the conversations every couple should have before retirement. And again, this isn't going to be on the financial side. This is about little marriage counseling here for you. So imagine you've been married, let's say 30 years. You've raised your kids, you built your careers, you paid your mortgage, you paid your bills, you saved in your 401k, you did everything right. And for decades, both of you have been saying the exact same thing. Someday, we're going to retire. That's fantastic. But here's my question. Have you actually asked each other what retirement means? Let me repeat that. Have you ever actually asked each other what retirement means? Maybe the husband's retirement is a 40-foot motorhome with a big trailer behind it and traveling the country for the next 6 months. The wife's retirement is, boy, I can vouch for this one. I'll share some stories. Grandchildren, gardening, and never, ever sleeping anywhere that does not have room service. He's thinking about moving to Florida. She already told the kids that you're going to have to carry me out of this house. I'm not going anywhere. She wants 3 international trips a year. He's excited that he'll finally have enough time to reorganize his shop. Again, financially, they're completely prepared for retirement. But there's one little problem. They've prepared for 2 completely different retirements. So let me start my first segment on this. What does retirement look like to you? Now, this is the first question that couples should ask each other. Not how much money do we have together? Instead, what do you actually want our life to look like? Have you ever done that? I bet I can count on one hand how many couples over my career have ever done this. So this conversation is, again, what do you actually want our life to look like in retirement? Things like, where do you want to live? Do you want to travel? If so, how often? Do you want to work at all? What time do you imagine getting up each and every day? What hobbies do you want to do? How involved do you want to be with the grandchildren? Do you want to do some volunteer work? Do you want a second vacation home? What does an ordinary, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday look like for you? And this last one is one of my favorites. Forget the Mediterranean cruise. What are the 2 of you doing on a random Tuesday in the month of February? That's retirement, folks. That's reality. Notice I'm not saying, again, anything about money. I'm talking about just getting along. Been married for 30 years, but this is a new chapter. You both are going to be together 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You wonder why there's a high divorce rate in this country and the gray divorce, they call it? This is one of the reasons. People just are not used to being together in retirement, but I'm hoping to solve that. So my next segment, I love this one that I've titled, Wait a Minute, You're going to be home every single day? Kind of what I said, the story about my mom and my dad. And here's why I say this. For 30 years, husband leaves at 7 o'clock in the morning. The wife has her routine. I'm referring to my mom here. Or vice versa. Then suddenly, good morning, honey. It's Monday. Good morning. Tuesday, it's good morning. Wednesday, the wife looks at you and says, why are you still here? Retirement can completely change the rhythm. You like that word? The rhythm of a marriage. And then again, as I said, suddenly you're together all day, all night, 7 days a week. But you need to further your discussion and talk about the following. What's my personal space? How much can this person give me? Meaning my spouse. Separate hobbies. Rarely do I ever come across a couple that has the same hobbies. Rarely. You need to talk about friends. Usually by this phase of life, you've really narrowed your list of friends down to probably 5 or so that are really truly close that you spend time with. But does he have his own set of friends? Does she have her own set of friends? Do you have common friends? How are you going to devote your time to them? What's our routine going to be? You going to go from getting up at the crack of dawn for the last 30 years to sleeping until 9 o'clock in the morning? Well, you need to talk about it. What is each of yours individual interests? Remember, as I always say, what's your reason for getting out of bed in retirement? What's your interest? And then one other thing is, are you going to have any time apart? Now, there's nothing wrong with, one of you going off for 2 or 3 days to whatever, go visit family, go fishing, whatever the reason is. There's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't show a weak marriage. But you need to talk about that because one of you may say, I don't want to be apart from my spouse. I want to be involved in everything that he does or she does. And your spouse may be going, wait a minute, time out, dude or dudette. I need my personal space, right? I love you, but I'm with you 24/7. I need some personal space here. So yeah, I'm going to go see the grandkids in, Utah, and you can stay home here in Reno for 2 or 3 days and fend for yourself. Because remember this, you never retire from an individual. Never retire from an individual. And also a successful retirement doesn't necessarily mean you have to spend 24 hours a day together. You have to find that balance. And that's, again, one of the big transition points in retirement. Not only is it the financial transition, but it's also the time with your spouse. All right, when we come back, we're finally going to go see the world. I'll tell you about that one in just a moment. We're back to the John Sanchez Show on News Talk 780 KOH. Bit of a down week, but a nice day today. Finished at 518 on the Dow. NASDAQ rose 113, and the S&P 500 higher by 33. All right, same marriage, different retirement. Are you and your spouse on the same page? Let me continue on. Let's talk a little bit about travel. So one spouse says, finally, we're both retired. We're finally going to go see the world. By the way, that would be my spouse, my wife. I hate airports. That would be me. Travel expectations, completely different. One wants to go to Europe, cruises. The other wants RVs, national park, 6-week trips. The other wants a weekend in Tahoe, stay home on Sunday. So compromise. Maybe one spouse takes a certain trip with friends. Maybe shorter trips. Maybe family trips. I see that a lot. Maybe one major trip annually instead of 4. So travel, as you will find in retirement, is one of the largest discretionary expenses during the early retirement years. Clients tend to love to go take the cruises, the big trips, or across the world during those first few years of retirement. Typically, what they'll tell me is, "Hey, I want to do this now. A, while I have the money, and B, while I have my health that I can do it. I don't want to wait till later." But generally, again, rarely do you see both couples love to travel, or both people love to travel. Again, I wrote that based upon my wife and I, as I've made it very clear, I absolutely hate to travel. I hate airports. I hate everything about traveling. I want to sleep in my own bed or in my own RV or on my own boat. I don't want to be in a hotel. I don't care how fancy it is. I don't care what great room service. I just don't like it. I don't like it. My wife, on the other hand, is, again, bring me the room service, bring me the nice room. She could stay anywhere. But again, this is a very common problem. Next point. Big question. Where in the heck are we going to live? Yeah, again, I'm going to talk from personal experience here in a second. Husband says, you know what? I've had enough of this place. I'm a big fisherman. I want to move to Florida. So I have great offshore fishing. So we're going to sell this place in Reno. We're going to move somewhere quote, cheaper. The wife says, no, we're not. We are not going anywhere. Husband says, but really? We should downsize, save some money. Wife says, no, we should stay in the family home. Wife says we need to be closer to our children. Husband says maybe we need to be farther away from our children and grandchildren. Warmer climate, lower taxes, smaller property, age 55 plus community, you name it, condo, second home, you name it. There's an emotional issue that financial planning software cannot quantify. And that is this major asset that we call our home. One spouse says, hey, look at this. And this would be me. We've got a $900,000 asset. We've got $700,000 in equity. The other spouse, usually the wife, says, but honey, this is where we raised our children. Well, neither one of you are wrong. Both of you have important issues until we get to number 5. You've heard me refer to them as the magnet. Grandchildren, I'm referring to, and grandchildren can change everything. Everything. Maybe, before the grandbabies were born, you did plan to downsize and move out of the area to somewhere cheaper. As soon as those beautiful little gods of angels appear, life completely changes. The grandbabies arrive. Suddenly, you're going to find men. Grandma isn't going anywhere. I don't care how you try to negotiate. I don't care how much money you throw her way. I don't care how big or whatever it takes to entice her. She is not going to leave those grandchildren. I have run across this one myself. I've got almost 20-month, almost 21-month-old granddaughter. My grandson, about 6 months old. And my wife has made it very clear. We will never move away from the grandchildren. We moved them out to the ranch, matter of fact. That's how bad it is. So we get to see them every day. But I see this all the time. I've shared stories with you where I've seen, again, clients where we have, they've done the work. I've guided them, paid off the house, went into retirement debt-free, all kinds of assets. Everything is great. And then they get the phone call. Hey, Dad, I just took a job in Kansas. Well, congratulations, son. But Dad, we're leaving. When you leaving? Yeah, in a month. And I assume you're taking the grandbabies? Of course I am, Dad. You turn to your wife and say, honey, the kids and the grandkids are moving to Kansas. And she will look you straight in the eye and say, when are we moving? That's moving the magnet. It's real life. If you're young and you're listening to me about this, you may be going, yeah, right. I'm telling you, I've seen it. I can't tell you how many times in my life with my clients, but now I am living it myself. I will never be able to move away from my grandchildren because I could do it. I mean, I'm a grandfather. I love they're beautiful. I love them. But if I wanted to really move somewhere, it's like, okay, I can, see you. I know it sounds kind of cold, but hey, you know what? If I'm in retirement, this is kind of my time. Grandma, no way in heck. No way in heck. She is not going to leave this. She's made it very clear. The other fun thing about the magnet, as I'll call it, Grandma probably wants to have no problem. She has no problem spending her free time doing what? Babysitting. If you went into my living room right now, because we have the grandkids right now as we speak, it's a disaster. Now, I'm a clean freak. I'm an organizational freak. But I've learned when the grandchildren are over, I keep my mouth shut, let her be. She's called Momo. I let her be Momo. I'm Papa. And I just sit back and just love on the kids and like, you know what? She'll clean the house when the kids are gone, or the grandkids are gone. But she loves babysitting. Loves babysitting. We both love helping our kids, their parents. Of course, your time's going to be consumed going to various athletic events, soccer games, football, baseball, etc. The family dinners, can't beat them. Love doing that. But then Dad says, you know what? I didn't work 40 years to become a full-time babysitter. Guess what, buddy? You're going to lose that battle too, because you're not going to be able to negotiate how much time Grandma spends with the grandbabies, babysitting, and doing everything she can do. Just accept it. Just please accept it. It is not worth the argument that you are going to lose. I'm telling you, I've seen it way too many times, and I'm living it myself. I've learned to keep my mouth shut, and that's pretty hard for me. So maybe you can negotiate and say, you know what, do you have to babysit every day, honey? Luckily, what I have found, at least with my wife, is grandmas get tired, especially when they're very young, as my grandchildren are. And so, after like the other day, she had to babysit all day long. She was beat. And I always look at her and I say, that's why God made it so younger women can have children and not older ones, because we just don't have the energy the older we get. But, You got to talk about it. And then, of course, you start having the financial discussions about these beautiful grandbabies. And you go, hey, well, I just fell to this one the other day. I've got two step grandchildren and two, blood grandchildren. But the two step grandchildren, they're in sixth grade and fourth grade. Well, of course, they just went back to school. What does grandpa do? Of course, you guys need some money for clothes shopping, to hand over $1,000. Go shopping. So you're always willing to help out the grandchildren. Then, of course, you get into the bigger picture. Who's paying for college? Are we saving anything for them? So on and so forth. Vacations, cars, down payments. Again, are the adult kids part of your retirement plan without you realizing it? I bet they are. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. Just know it. And like I've said many times also, don't be surprised when your adult children, especially if they have your beautiful grandchildren, because they use those grandchildren as a bargaining chip, by the way, if you haven't seen that yet. And they'll realize that, hey, mom and dad are retired now. That means they got some bucks. So, I'm not going to hesitate to maybe ask mom and dad to help me out with that car payment or, this or that expense. Because they know now that you have grandchildren, you're not going to say no. Because what goes to your mind as a grandparent is, of course, they're having, they're a young couple. They're having a hard time. Yeah, let me help them with rent this month or with a car payment or something. Because if not, oh my gosh, they're going to fight. And that's going to be bad for my grandchildren. See, everything comes back to the grandchildren. They are the most incredible bargaining chip ever created by God. But we love them more than life itself. When we come back, we'll talk about what happens if one of you are a spender, the other one is not. Welcome back to the John Sanchez Show on News Talk 780 KOH. I hope you've enjoyed today's topic, same marriage, different retirement. Now let's move on to my next point. One wants to spend, the other one is terrified to spend. So now we got to bring a little bit of money into the conversation. But we're going to bring in money from an emotional standpoint. Two people can look at the same, $1 million, $2 million portfolio. One says financial freedom. The other says, this is my life savings. It's my security. Don't you dare touch it. The spender says, hey, we can afford that trip. The saver says, what if we live to 100? We'll run out of money if we start blowing money on trips. And often the saver is not being irrational. They've spent 40 years being rewarded for not spending their retirement money. Then one day we tell them, guess what? Congratulations. Start spending your money. You're in that chapter of life. Psychologically, that's very difficult for some people. I've also said a lot of the upbringing that you have has a lot to do, whether you're that spender or that saver. If you're raised by your parents, grandparents, etc., I bet if you look back, you're going to have a lot of the same money management skills, both good and bad. So I should say skills and bad habits that your parents or grandparents. I remember, again, like it was yesterday, early in my career, I had this young gal. She was in her 30s, and she became a new client. And, we sat down and went through all the normal questions, your risk tolerance, your goals, etc. And I could not convince this woman for the life of me at 30 years old to invest. I remember it wasn't a big portfolio, probably like 5-10 grand or something, to invest in the stock market. She wanted CDs. And I just could not figure it out. So I dug a little bit deeper. Well, come to find out, she was raised by her grandparents. Her grandparents were Depression era babies. They're telling her as she's growing up and, developing her own thinking, bury your money in the backyard. Don't trust banks. Don't trust Wall Street. Don't trust anybody. Keep that money safe and secure. And that's carried over into her adult life. Sometimes retirement planning, folks, is not about giving someone, quote, permission to retire. It's giving them permission to enjoy what they spent their lifetime building. The reason I threw that in is because retirement planning is an art. It is not a science. Every one of you are different people. You have different risks. You have different dreams, different goals. But I'll tell you one commonality all of you have if you're in retirement or going to be in retirement, and that is you're going to die at some point. Challenge is, as retirement planners, we don't know when you're going to die. We have to plan for worst case scenario. Meaning you could live to be 100 years old and that money needs to last you. But at the same time, life is short. We don't know when we're going to, not wake up one day. So we have to find that balance between enjoying life in retirement, not doing stupid things with our money, but also, making sure that money's going to last, because no one wants to go back to work at 75 years old, but at the same time, enjoying and rewarding. That's something that retirement planning many times forgets about, rewarding yourself for a lifetime of sacrifice. So there's not one clear formula I can tell you. It's a matter of trial and balance. You have to figure out what is it going to take to make you happy, and spend a little bit and enjoy it, but not spend too much. Pretty basic. My next area. What if one of the spouses does not want to retire? Come across this many times. One spouse says, you know what? It's Monday morning. I'm done. I'm turning in my 30-day notice. I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I'm tired. I'm bored. There's other things in life I want to do. Let's see, what else do I hear? I don't want to adapt to new technology, i.e., there's a million reasons. The other spouse says, wait a minute, what do you mean you're done? I love my job. So why in the world should they both retire simultaneously? Maybe one works another year, 3 years, 5 years, maybe part-time. Maybe they consult. I've shared with you my stories with that. And this creates another relationship issue. And boy, I need to do a show on this one. One spouse is free, in other words, retired. The other says, no, I can't take that trip. No, I can't extend it into a 3-day weekend. Why? Because I have meetings, I have deadlines, I have travel, I've got work responsibilities. The retired spouse says, wait a minute, I wanted to go to Italy for a month. The working spouse says, wait a minute, I've got a job. So retirement doesn't have to happen simultaneously, but I always encourage my clients, if you can make it happen and you both want to, it is so much more enjoyable and so much easier to both retire at the same time. So there it is. Same marriage, different retirement, different dreams, goals. Bottom line, it comes down to this, and we all know this as adults: communicate with your spouse, find that happy medium, and enjoy the hell out of retirement life. God bless. Have a great afternoon. We'll see you Monday on the John Sanchez Show.